Okay. So we're going to try to do this the first time. I'm not going to try to edit it out. I'm just going to do it because this is going to take a lot of practice to make these videos. And so I appreciate your patience as I get started. So let me just get the intro out of the way and then we'll get started. All right. So today, what we're going to talk about is social constructs and autism, and really why it is so important to know about these uh, social constructs. So, what is a social construct? Okay, social constructs, and I reason why I put this out in words is so that you can read this, and I want you to research this yourself. Don't just take my word for it. You can research this yourself and see what it means. But I did sociology and all this stuff, and this is where I found it out. So I'm just going to share it with you. So basically, your social contracts are ideas or rules that are created by people that agree to follow. So basically, society agrees that we are all going to do a certain type of thing. We're all going to agree to behave in a certain way. So, like, for example, money is, let's say, paper or coins, but everyone agrees it has value. So we use it to buy things. Another example would be, let's say, an idea of normal behavior. Society may decide that certain actions of way of talking are normal, even if they don't make sense to everyone. Okay. These would be an example of social constructs. This is how our society works. Okay. This is the beginning so that you really have an understanding of what this really means to you as an autistic person. And like I said, this is the first time I've done it using this method. So I appreciate your patience as I try to figure it out. So, neurotypical brains work differently, completely different than autistic brains. So, their brains are wired to react and to receive social information. They get a reward by doing that. And what happens is they neurotypical people also have a tendency to adjust their behavior to match these rules because their brains might reward, and I say might, but it does, with a sense of comfort, belonging when they fit in, because fitting in is really important for neurotypical brains. This is how their brains are made. Okay. It it allows for them to function just like we need to function. Okay. So, like I said, I appreciate your patience as we go through this because I don't have pictures, I don't have music. I really wanted you to just read it and then have the opportunity to research this information yourself, because I can tell you all day long, but you know, researching yourself makes a big difference. So let's see if we can kind of speed this up a little bit and get to the good part. Okay, so autistic brains, we don't we don't pick up these patterns the same way. Okay, so because of theory of mind and things like that, we see the world in a different way because these social constructs, it's difficult to apply to us because we don't understand them, because we're kind of missing the parts. So basically, autistic people might see the world in a more direct, detailed, or logical way. Obviously, we do that, and which makes the invisible rules seem confusing and unnecessary. So these invisible social rules that we experience can be confusing because the rules change a lot, and it's kind of based on who we're dealing with and what's going on. And again, this is all based off social constructs. Okay. Now, part of having an autistic brain means that we have certain things that we do. Okay. One is direct and logical thinking. So our brains prioritize logic and straightforward communication, mostly because it's easier for our brain to do that. It is because it takes less work for our brain to do it that way, because we have to compensate for a lot of extra impairments. Let's even just visual stimulation, anything like that, we have to compensate for. Okay. And that's where it says different sensory processing. Autistic people may have heightened or different sensory experiences, and this makes them more focused on how things feel, look, sound, whatever, and behave according to that instead of how other people think. Okay. So this is where it gets kind of funky. Okay. When we really want to talk about our social constructs, neurotypical people, and then us, because, like I said, we are inherently different in how we think and how they think. Okay. So, first, of course, we have literal understanding. We know that, you say when someone says something to us, we're going to believe you exactly as you said it. Right. And then also, let's say social learning. Neurotypical brains, they learn this stuff from the get-go, right from their beginnings of life. It is an automatic process. And we don't necessarily pick this up because we not only develop slower, but we also have other impairments and things that prevent that from happening. Then we want to add on to, let's say, this focus on authenticity. So typically with how we feel about things, it's gonna come out of our mouths. Whether you agree with it or not, we're gonna say it. And non-autistic people do not do that because, again, the social constructs, the social pressure to comply makes them change maybe what they truly believe and will try to conform in order to be accepted by others because their brain is going to reward them for doing that. Where in our brains, it really does not, it doesn't reward us in a way that is the same as non-autistic people. I told myself if I did this, I could play War Thunder. So, I really want you to understand I had to reward myself for getting this done. And I said, this is my first time doing it. This method, so you'll probably see a bunch of different methods of me trying to do these videos. So basically, here we go. So neurotypical people often expect everyone, including autistic individuals, to follow these social constructs. These social constructs were invented by men. They were invented way, way, way back in history when we first came over from England, and we had all these rules. So we've just kind of adapted, expanded them, but these rules are here. And because they assume these unwritten rules, because they're not law, it's a man-made rule, that they're natural, universal, and necessary for existence, social existence. And part of this is what leads to the misunderstandings of us as autistic people because of how their brains developed from the beginning and how their ability to understand us and how we communicate. Okay. Now, maybe at this point you're like, this isn't really that interesting, Christina, but I think it does get better. And it's gonna kind of help you understand why perhaps it is important for you to have an understanding of this. So here we are. Neurotypical brains are typically wired to learn social rules automatically by observing others. Okay. So they observe other people, they learn these rules, they have theory of mind, all this other stuff. So they pick up on that interaction and what they're supposed to do. Okay. And what happens is that because they have lived this life their entire life, so they've never known anything else, the understanding that an autistic person does not have those same social constructs or have that same ability to understand social concepts does not make sense. It does not make sense because they're unable to conceptualize it because they don't know anything different. Just like I didn't know anything different before I knew I was autistic. I thought everybody felt like I did. No, that's not right. Neurotypical people, they have a different thought process than autistic people. So here was an example. So if I contact a scene in neurotypical people as a sign of being attentive, that means that you're listening. If you're looking in my eyeballs, that means you must be listening to me. But for an autistic person or even someone with ADHD, it's not that same concept because looking at your eyes will be distracting to me and therefore I'm not able to listen. Okay? But they're not able to understand that because automatically their brains can look in someone's eyes and listen at the same time. So they can't conceptualize why you can't do that exact same thing. Okay. And this is where the social constructs start affecting your life as an autistic or an ADHD person is because they have the inability to really understand what you're experiencing because they have never experienced anything other than what they have now. Okay. So moving on to I really worked hard on this. I'm kind of proud of myself. Okay. So number one, and this came from sociology. I never would have known this. I've not taken my sociology class, but it's important to really understand. So your social pressure to conform. Society has these rules of how you behave, dress, all this, blah, blah, blah. And neurotypicals get a, a brain reward by conforming. Okay. So the more they conform, the more they get socially accepted, they get this reward in their brain that says, hey, I feel good. Therefore, this is how I should continue to be. It's kind of like a drug a little bit. Okay. So when they see a autistic person not following these rules, the first instinct is to change it because again, it doesn't match what they are used to. Now, yeah, we have to have an understanding of this. If you have never experienced anything like this, it you're not going to understand that how can you if you've never experienced it? I mean, I understand that if I don't experience it, I don't have a full understanding. Okay. And then two, they want to have that predictability of knowing that if I comply, I do this, this is what's going to happen, blah, blah. It's the same as autistics. We love predictability, but maybe not for the same reasons. This predictability for us provides safety. For them, it provides social safety. That's two different things. Social safety and then just feeling safe. They really kind of aren't the same thing, but maybe another video I'll figure it out and I'll explain it better. Right now, I didn't really think about it until just now that there's a distinct difference between social safety and then feeling safe because I personally never really ever feel socially safe. But that's another story. And like I said, this is a new way I'm doing this, so I'm trying to pause and do all the other stuff. But I appreciate your patience. Okay, so what happens is and when you're trying to communicate to a neurotypical or your mom, dad, anybody, and they are not autistic, right? They're going to apply those social constructs, those ideas onto your behaviors and communications. Even though you're not meaning it, they're going to unconsciously apply that to your behavior. Okay. And that's why you'll see, where you're getting in trouble or why aren't you doing this or doing that? Okay. Again, that's because they are applying their own thoughts and behaviors onto you because they don't understand that there is a difference, or they don't even understand what that must not feel like. What does that feel like? How do they know? They would never know because it's been like this their entire life. Okay. The problem is for an autistic person, masking takes an incredible amount of cognitive brain work. And it takes away from your ability really to enjoy life. Then you feel like you're lying because you're really not yourself. You're pretending, try to blend in because you don't want to be ostracized again, right? And then two, we already know that nobody understands. So what's the point of explaining myself because you're not going to understand me anyway, right? So here we are. This is where we're at. We know this. This is our lives, whether we like it or not. It sucks. Let's see if I can forward this over. All right. Now we get to something that is probably the most serious out of all of it. And it's called bias. And with bias, you try to fix this because you don't actually even see all of it. I don't know why you don't see all of it, but you don't. Doesn't matter. Well, I'm not even gonna fuck with it because it's like I said, this is my second time, so we're gonna practice. Okay. So anchor bias, okay, is when basically means that no matter what, if I have one piece of information, let's say I watch Rain Man 5 times, that's autism to me. And there is nothing that you're going to do to change to me what autism is to me. So, like, say, neurotypical, I've been raised with certain norms, like the expectation, let's say, making eye contact is polite or small talk is necessary to show friendliness. These are their anchor biases. These things are so set inside their unconscious. They're not even thinking about it. So when I, the autistic person, do not do these things, the assumption is that we're being rude because again, the idea is again, everybody should be doing this because everybody does in their mind. Because again, we are only seeing how we're our own lives and what we have experienced. And we have never experienced an autistic life. So how are we supposed to know? And so here we go. Now we have then, it's called confirmation bias. So what is confirmation bias? Confirmation bias means is that you could talk all day long, all day, every day, and give every reason about autism or ADHD. But because the more you're pushing it, it's almost like pathological demand avoidance. If you really want to know, the more they're going to keep looking for information to confirm their original idea. So they're not going to look for information to confirm your idea. They're going to look for information to confirm their idea. Okay. Because again, this is about an internal uncomfortable. I don't like being overstimulated, but it's different because there's a lot of anxiety and shame. We don't know where it's coming from, so on and so forth. So again, we are going to keep looking at information that confirms what we originally thought instead of going outside that scope and looking for other information that may counter confirm. We're not able to do that because, again, there's a limit to what, as a non-autistic person, what they're able to understand and comprehend. Okay. And again, we have our whole world, everything around us is saying, autistic people are second class citizens. So, well, I'm not going to go ahead and bother myself and try to expand up past that because, again, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm seeing, so on and so forth. So, again, with confirmation bias, anchoring bias, these things are set in stone. These are very, very hard to change. And the more you try to convince, the more it will stay. And in fact, you will probably make it be worse. Okay. Then what we have is another thing. This is something that, as an autistic person, you really, really need to understand. Okay. Is how memory works. Okay. Memory in non-autistic changes. It changes with social interaction. So if I feel better about you, I may have hated you 2 weeks ago, but we made up, and now I like you again. So whatever the memory of that event that just happened, right? Well, it's just changed now. Now it's not quite as bad as it was. It's not quite what it was. Everything changes. But the thing is, with autistic humans, our autobiographical memory is actually quite good. It's actually one of our better memories that we have, believe it or not. And what happens is that we get into these discussions with a neurotypical person, and here I am, an autistic person, and their memory has changed, but my memory has not. Okay, my memory is still the same because in order for cognitive dissonance in regards to social situations only, now because with cognitive dissonance is going to happen elsewhere in autistics, because again, those parts do work. But when it comes to your social portion, this is where it starts to get a little weird because you're not really able to let's say reframe it in your head and go, well, it was somebody else or this. You're going to really try, but in the back of your mind, it's going to say, well, you're autistic. It's probably your fault, right? So it always kind of is. So the reframing really never really works, even though you're really trying to do it. But with non-autistics, it's a very natural thing. It's their brain does it just all by itself. It's kind of pretty that it just kind of happens. So what happens is they may go, I read online that autistics can't or whatever, don't make eye contact because it's hard for them to think. But then their memory is going to go back and all these times that they accused you of not paying attention because you weren't making eye contact. Well, now guilt starts setting in. Shame starts setting in because, I'm not a bad person, right? Because that's where cognitive dissonance comes in and says, I don't believe I'm a bad person. So my brain is going to help me with that by changing and reframing that it wasn't really me. It was you. It was you. And we may change how the events occurred. Not on, it's now understanding this isn't on purpose. This isn't like, let's say, I'm really specifically thinking this. This is their brains are doing this on its own. Okay. So what happens is we as autistic people get incredibly distressed because, okay, I remember this. I don't know I remember this. You're telling me I'm lying. Okay, now conflict has increased because the other party is saying, no, I'm right and you're right. You're autistic and I'm neurotypical, so you're wrong and I'm right. And here we go. Okay. So what happens is Again, these are social norms. These are social things taught in your very, very beginning of your beautiful life as a child, and how you learn to socialize, especially in neurotypical. So this is embedded. It's unconscious. It's not necessarily on purpose. Maybe in some most time, maybe it is on purpose. Honestly, I couldn't tell you, but this is what's happening. Okay, so then we have again our confirmation bias, then we have our anchoring bias, and then cognitive dissonance. It makes anxiety and the uncomfortable. God, I don't want to be. I'm not a bad person, and this person's making me feel like I was a bad person because I wasn't understanding or whatever. So in my brain, I'm going to change that and reframe it. I'm going to reframe it as in they're the one that caused me to behave this way, or they're the person, their memory is wrong, my memory is correct. And as autistics, we go, well, maybe they're right. But here's the thing. We have a lot of impairments, but there are certain impairments we do not really have so much of in, and that would be autobiography, social memory. And boy, if it inflicted a emotional response, your ass remembers that to the fucking T. Okay? You don't forget that shit no day long, every day you remember that. Okay? And then you start getting angry because this person is telling you that you're lying. And now we're escalating, right? Because I'm not a liar, right? I know I'm telling the truth because I want to tell the truth. Okay. So what happens is we have misunderstanding and misjudgment. So now the autistic person is being rude, is being defiant. We are being whatever because we're not complying the rule. The rule says that memories are supposed to be able to be changed. We're supposed to just agree with that. We're just supposed to just follow along. And neurotypicals, their brains are rewarded for following along. This is all part of this social reward. We don't have that reward. It doesn't work the same for objects, but not social. So here we are. Now this is where you start encountering your gaslighting and all this extra stuff, because again, the neurotypical person that you're talking to believes their memory is correct and your memory is incorrect. And for most of us, and like I did, I agreed. I said, you know what, maybe my memory is wrong. Well, I'm gonna let you know that's one of the ways that my memory probably is not wrong. Okay, so now we're going to get to the social reward system. I probably have missed pages, but that's okay. As long as we get a gist of what I'm talking about here. So the social reward system in the autistic brain is not the same as it is in a non-autistic brain. Okay, they tested this. Simon Baron Cohen tested this theory on newborns and literally showed them a picture of an object or a person, and children who end up most likely being autistic always liked looking at objects more than they like looking at people. Okay, because our brains don't reward, they don't give that that good feeling like neurotypical brains get when they are social. It doesn't give it to us like that. And so what happens is, again, we have this interchange where not only do we not get this reward from the social, so we're not able to say conform and do the things in social constructs because hey, we're not getting rewarded, so why the fuck am I gonna listen to you? Right? Here we are. And then when depending on how good your theory of mind is, now theory of mind really is going to be based on everyone. Everyone is going to be different. My particular theory of mind is not is not the best. It's pretty poor. So I have a really hard time. I have an idea. I can guess that something's the matter, but I can't really tell. I don't know what it is. And the amount of brain work that it takes for me to try to figure it out sometimes just isn't worth it. So that's where, that's a disconnect, because how, as a neurotypical, if you're getting rewarded for socialization and you have theory of mind and you have that relaxation that I get that implied message that the other person is, you naturally feel safe or whatever. How are you going to understand me, the autistic person who doesn't have that work? You can't. You simply cannot understand it because your brain has always done it. So you can't, you have no idea what that might be like to not know what that feels like. Okay. So this goes into a lot of other things, especially when it comes to, let's say, studies and things like that, but we're not going to go about that today. So when you have these social behaviors, neurotypicals, they get dopamine. We love dopamine. I love dopamine, but I get dopamine from learning things, and that's where I get mine. It's not from people. It's from learning and exploring and things of that nature. And that's hard for people to understand, that me going to a party is not a reward. It is more of a punishment versus, let's say working on my computer. Okay. But again, all autistics are different. We're not all the same, because again, your environment during your very beginning of development, that's from age 2 to 5, is what's going to be able to determine your success in your life. Now, if your mom was someone who, let's say, talked to you and treated you like you're just a normal kid, not like you're normal, you didn't need help, but normal, but with still accommodations and was understanding and listen, well, your social behavior is going to be a lot different, let's say, than my social behavior, where, let's say, nobody wanted to talk to me. Okay. Silence was rewarded. Okay. You see how it's different. It's not going to be the same, because your environment is what is going to help your brain make the appropriate connections, long and short connections. Again, we'll talk about that again later. That is why it's so important to talk to your kid like they're a regular kid, but with the understanding that they have an F1 engine in their brain. And so we got to be mindful of that. Okay. And when we have theory of mind is the essential part of you feeling safe. Okay. Because your theory of mind, and depending, like I said, it varies based on the autistic person. We are not all the same because our genetics are not all the same. Okay. And I come from a long line, I think, of autistics, and my dad is a diagnosed autistic, and I'm very, very much like him. And so my ability, let's say, to have an understanding of how people communicate and things is not as good, let's say, as somebody else. Now, does that mean I'm dumb? No, my IQ is 129. I have a very high IQ. It doesn't really help me in this particular portion, because that part doesn't work. Okay. And you have to think of the brain as literally as an engine with parts. And these parts all kind of have to work in order for the engine to work the way it's supposed to. But if it doesn't work, some of your parts don't work, what happens is that the autistic brain says, well, I'm going to do some, roundabout ways and things like that to try to make it work, because the brain wants to be as efficient as possible. It's going to do whatever it can to be efficient, but it can only do what it can with what it has. Okay. And so here we are, theory of mind. So if a good example of theory of mind would be, let's say you're worried about something. You're worried about something at school, and your teacher says, you know what, I think everything will be fine. But she's not really very specific. She's kind of general when she speaks to you. Because if you have low theory of mind, you're not going to get that sense of safety and that I'm okay, because it doesn't work properly. If you were a neurotypical and you were autistic, that same conversation might make you feel fine enough for you to move on, have a good weekend, and go and party or whatever. But for the autistic, it doesn't communicate the same way. Okay, so again, I encourage you to research this. Google Scholar is a beautiful thing. You just really gotta just keep messing with it. I usually put in there PDF free to find the free stuff, and there's so much free stuff. Just a matter of you looking. All right, so I think I'm probably missing pages. I don't know if I'm missing pages, but it doesn't matter. All right, so this is more specific, but how theory of mind works. And again, you can slow this video down and read this yourself. I'm trying to explain it and talk to you, but again, I want you to research this so you can understand it for yourself. And maybe, and if you learn something new, please tell me, because we can always learn something new. But the theory of mind allows them to guess what others may be thinking or feeling based on context, body language, and other social signals. It's almost like telepathy, but not. Okay. We don't really have that. That is a skill for us now. It's not the same as a instinctual item. It is a skill that we have to learn. And this is a skill that's not very accurate, because unfortunately, as people age and as they grow, they're less likely to communicate honestly and clearly, because they just aren't. It's harder for them to do that, as let's say from a child to adult. Children are more honest, just because they don't have these social rules that say, no, I should cover, not speak about myself, whatever that means. So again, social constructs, reward, they're together. These social rewards means that they're gonna seek out interactions and these rules, and we're gonna follow these rules. And because you, the autistic person, is not following these rules and not doing it, well, that's weird. It's weird to them because they don't understand that. So because they don't understand that, that makes them uncomfortable, because that doesn't seem right. Because in their brain, you're supposed to understand that. Okay. But for social constructs for autistic people, it's a little bit harder, because if we're not experiencing those same social experiences, we don't see social things the same way. Let's say hierarchy, things like that. So, do I have a problem saying how do I feel? And I feel like shit. No, I'm going to tell you. But to a neurotypical person, you're like, why would you tell me that? Why wouldn't you just lie? You just say everything's a great day. You ruined my day by saying your day was bad. Yeah, that goes. But again, it's not a conscious action. It's an unconscious reaction to something that is uncomfortable. Okay, it's saying, I don't understand it. It makes me uncomfortable because I don't understand it, because I've never experienced it before. Just like we don't understand and then we get uncomfortable, it's the same. It's the same thing. Okay, it's not different. It's just kind of how it is. So here we are. So again, we have an expectation of reciprocity. Oh my God, my dyslexia. So they expect for you, the autistic, to reciprocate back. Okay, so if I do some, I expect you to smile back, respond in a positive way, because those are the social rules that we have decided are the rules of life, and you're not following them, and that's weird, because we are all complying. How come you are not complying? Okay, you see that? It's about we as not neurotypicals are complying, but you are not complying, and we do not like the fact that you are not complying because we have to comply. Well, that's going to make people angry, whether it's going to be conscious or unconscious. But this is part of the difference between them and us. Okay, so assumptions about understanding. So, neurotypical may assume that if a social rule makes sense to them, it's going to make sense to everyone else. It should make sense to you as an autistic. You should know because I know, but they're not able to understand again that we don't have those same parts or working parts to make those connections work. Okay, they can't conceptualize it. Okay, and that's probably the number one reason why you'll see, a lot of abuse in the home and so on, because it's very frustrating for the neurotypical person because you, as the autistic person, are not complying like I have to comply as a neurotypical person. This is what I've been taught since I was a child, was to comply, and you are refusing to do that. Okay, that's how it's seen. Okay, not that I just don't because it doesn't make sense to me because those parts don't work. It's because you're being rude. Okay. So this is where abuse and things happen in the autistic home often because this conflict going back and forth is incredibly frustrating on both sides. It's frustrating for the autistic person and it's frustrating for the parent or whomever the caregiver is or the spouse, whomever. Okay. Because that neurotypical family member misinterprets that behavior of the autistic person because they are putting on their own social constructs into that autistic person. So they're believing that autistic person is responding in the same manner for the same reason as they would. Okay? You understand that? So I'm mad at you because I'm thinking that you think like I do. But what they don't understand is that just isn't happening because half the time we don't even understand what's going on. But again, here we are, we're not making eye contact. Our language is direct, it's truthful. We're just not doing what they're expecting us to do. And that is incredibly frustrating. And that's when you'll simply see a lot more abuse, anger, punishments happening because you are not complying to the rules for which has been set forth that I was brought up as neurotypical. You are supposed to follow these rules as well. Okay. So again, these repeated negative reactions, this becomes a cycle. So what happens is it just gets worse and it escalates on both sides, right? I'm upset that you are telling me that I'm lying. I'm not telling the truth. I'm whatever. I'm autistic. You know what happens, okay? And then on the other side, they're telling you that you're either being bad or you're not listening or you don't care or one of those things. Again, back and forth, back and forth. This right here is the biggest problem because again, the neurotypical is putting that social construct on to you as the autistic person. They're assuming that you, as the autistic person, are thinking like they are. And they're not realizing that it's just not there. You're the parts aren't there. Unfortunately, if you don't have the parts, it's just not going to be there, right? You're not even thinking that because most of the time you're still trying to figure out what the hell they're saying because that's the hardest part. Because usually in a conflict situation, now the stress starts setting in. Now I'm getting tired. Now it's becoming more work for me to understand you. And again, what happens is as you start having to compensate for the stress, guess what's happening to you? You're becoming more autistic. And in the car. So here we are now. So now what do you do? So you're masking because you're just gonna pretend just to keep the peace, right? Well, the problem with masking is masking takes a lot of cognitive work, okay? Because your brain now is working double time trying to pretend that you are not who you are in order to blend in, and is trying to anticipate and translate and understand an environment that it does not. Because if you ever listen to neurotypical talk, a lot of implied information, we got semantics, pragmatics, all these things. That's a lot of extra work for your brain, and you're getting tired fast. Okay, the more tired you get, the more closer you get to overstimulation. The more closer you get to overstimulation, the more closer you're going to start getting to being let's say agitated, angry, snappy, mean, things of that nature. It's simply because your brain's just working too hard. Now I'm just fucking tired and I just want to stop now, right? Well, what has happened is that just in suicide rates, just in autistics themselves, it's almost, I think our life expectancy not even close to 40. That's how fast we just say, fuck it, I don't want to be a part of this world anymore. Because that's how hard it is to communicate with other people. Because if someone's always assuming that you are thinking, feeling, whatever, something that you are simply just not, because it's really honestly, it's just too hard. Eventually you want to give up, right? But you know you should not give up because this is dumb. It's so dumb it's dumb to waste the energy on someone or some group of people that simply cannot comprehend you. They just can't. And that's where you really have to focus on yourself and go, okay, what is most important to me? Okay. Number one, again, it's going to be your boundaries, right? What 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 is it about you that is your, let's say, your final line, what you will take and what you won't take. So negative reactions to social differences lead to these outcomes. I don't know who writes this. I think it was just me, and I'm terrible at it. Okay. So what happens? What happens when we start feeling like this? When we're not being heard and we're not being validated and we're just basically told that, you know, well, we're going to isolate because isolating feels safer. And then two, families actually will encourage that isolation because they don't really want to deal with you anyway. So we're going to, you know, this person here, this autistic person, she just can't control themselves, whatever. Okay, what do? I'm going to isolate myself. Am I going to socialize and go, hey, this is not true? Probably not, because I'm going to be doing something else. Then we're going to go internal shame saying, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why the fuck can't I just get this right? And then you ruminate until you just, I don't know is there a limit to ruminating? I'm not even sure. Then to add to that is the additional stress. We don't handle stress well. Stress is going to lead to burnout. And burnout means that you are not running 100%. That means that you are not an F1 engine right now. You are, quite frankly, a Yugo. Okay. You are literally a 4-cylinder Yugo and you are barely running. Okay. You are missing, you're low in oil and you're just not able to do it. And when your family, friends, whoever, they're not listening, because you probably told about half a dozen million people this is what's going on. They're like, well, you can figure it out. You're gonna give up. People give up. Don't give up. You don't have to give up. I'm gonna tell you why you don't have to give up, because it's not necessary. Reason why is that boundaries. Number one, boundaries are good. You're supposed to have boundaries. Boundaries are healthy. Look it up anywhere. Boundaries are what you are supposed to have. Boundaries are going to be what you will accept and what you will not accept in your life. Having good boundaries, saying, I love myself enough to say, no, I don't like how I'm being treated. No, you're not going to do that. Now, I'm going to tell you, people don't like it when you make boundaries. They're going to fight your boundaries. In fact, they're going to make you feel like shit because you have these boundaries. But you have to understand, boundaries aren't selfish. Boundaries are a representation of health. It means that you love yourself enough to protect yourself from things that you don't like. It's not unhealthy. It's not selfish. In fact, it's very loving of yourself to have these boundaries. Okay, it is, and you're gonna have, when you start having these boundaries and you start implementing these boundaries, they're gonna make you feel like you're an asshole for doing that. That you are selfish and you're not thinking about them, and yeah, your boundaries belong to you. Your boundaries are there for a reason. It is your job to keep your boundaries like a wall of a castle. And I'm going to tell you why you're going to keep these boundaries, why these boundaries are so important, and why you have to really protect them. First of all, I kind of think I can skip forward, but I didn't. It doesn't matter. Okay, so let's say we're in a situation, a conflict situation. And honestly, a conflict is going to be a waste of time because I'm going to tell you why it's a waste of time. Number one, it takes me forever, at least 1-2 days for me to process that conversation. And number two, I'm on-demand conversations. It's just never going to go well if it's on demand. If I haven't practiced and done what I was supposed to as far as prepare myself, like a school exam, I'm gonna fuck up. That means I'm gonna use the wrong word and things like that. And the more our conversation, let's say, goes in circles, or they're not really understanding or stopping to let you think, the more frustrated you're going to get. So what happens when you get more frustrated? You get more overstimulated. Now we're going into meltdown mode. It's so hard to recover out of that once you get in there, because the closer you are there, the rest of the doors of the logical side of your brain start closing. It's no longer listening anymore. Now it's all emotion. It's just, I feel terrible. Out of unity, and trust me, elopement, the wanting to run away, it doesn't end at age 3. It's forever. And for me, it's been forever. I still feel elopement. Like I'm like ready to bounce to like Antarctica when things don't work out. And again, this is about protecting yourself. And there's a very specific reason why we're doing this. Okay. And as soon as I click over to the part that matters, that actually gives me the reason, get there. Okay. So you remember that autobiography memory, you have that. If there was a emotional significance to that memory, you probably will never forget it. You remember like it's a movie that you've watched 20 times. Okay. There's no cognitive dissonance. It's going to make you feel better, or it's going to change and say that your brain just can't, it has such a hard time doing that. It just gives up. Right. However, your neurotypical person, their cognitive dissonance works real good. And they, in their own system, they believe themselves to be a good person. A good person does not make somebody else feel bad. So anything that you're saying that says that they're not treating you right is basically saying that they're a bad person, which they do not believe, because they believe they're a good person. So their cognitive dissonance sets in and says they are a good person. They reframe it. They start telling you that you don't remember, blah, blah, blah. And we have the gaslighting and all the other things that happen that goes along with it. But you have to understand, your autobiography memory is very, very good. You don't forget. Okay. So when you're having these conversations, is it worth your time, energy to continue to argue with somebody who can't remember correctly? No, it really isn't, because you're wasting your battery juice. Okay, because no matter what you say, then you could probably have proof right in your hand. You have a video. It won't change that cognitive dissonance. Okay, because their brain will just work harder. And again, is it on purpose? Maybe, maybe not. I have no idea. But it is unconscious. It's a trauma response. The worse the cognitive dissonance they have, usually the worse the trauma they experience. So just keep that in mind. Your ability to remember your social past is really good. So don't doubt yourself and say, well, I'm wrong. Just say, you know what, our perspectives are different and our memories are different. And just leave it at that. Walk away. I know it's hard to walk away, especially when you're really pissed off, but sometimes it's better than to waste energy. And understand too that it's hard for us to communicate with someone who can't take accountability, or they can't even directly communicate. It's it, and then what happens is, you just end up, whatever. Yeah, sure, go ahead. I don't care, because for us, lying, or let's say manufacturing things, takes a lot of cognitive brain work. And if we have our impairments that we have, I just don't have that extra juice to be doing that shit. So it's just easier just for me to be honest, and being honest honestly does not help me ever in these situations. I think honestly it makes it worse, because now I'm righteous or whatnot. I'm not. This is just how it is. Okay. Again, if people don't respect your boundaries, they're going to say whatever. And it's hard, and you're going to cry, and you're going to hate yourself. But you don't give up, because I'm giving you the information to understand that there's no reason for you to think negatively of yourself, because I mean, you are you and they are them. And just like you can't control you can't make yourself into another person, neither can they. Okay, so we have to be accepted and less judgmental of their inability to change. Okay, so this is why, and this is why you have your boundaries, is because you gotta protect your battery juice, the stuff that helps you compensate for your stuff, like it's gold. Okay, because any amount of extra cognitive processing, that means managing emotions, stress, social interactions, anything that is out of the ordinary, is going to take extra brain juice. Why would you waste that? Wow, don't waste that, because nobody likes feeling like that brain fog, because that's where that brain fog comes from, because you've literally just used up all your brain juice trying to do, because your brain is, your IQ is trying to manage this other stuff instead of what it wants to do, which is your special interests. Okay, so we want to avoid this, because we want to avoid being overstimulated. This is a bad place to be. We don't, because again, it becomes like a domino effect. The more you get into that spot, the more you're ruminating, the more it gets worse, the more you feel bad. Nobody likes to feel like that. Okay. Your reserves is your battery. We don't have long batteries. Some of us have longer batteries than other people. We all have different battery juices. I think mine's like a AAA. It's not very long, probably about 3 hours that I have. Anything extra above that, now I am really having to work hard on my emotional regulation and so on and so forth. That's very, very challenging to do. Okay. So why waste it arguing with someone who is or conflict because it's just more brain juice, and I just don't have any extra to waste because I got to use it just for my basic things. Because life is hard enough as it is. I don't want to waste it on trying to figure out, why you're manipulating whatever. It's just too much for me. Okay. So you really got to, choose your battles. Is it important to me or is it not important to me? And then, and respect yourself enough that is what's most important is you and your brain, because the more you have the brain juice and you're not wasting it, the less autism symptoms you're going to have. Okay. So the more you have to compensate, the more you have to manage all this other stuff, your autism symptoms are going to increase. That means you are going to be more autistic. Not like that's a bad thing, but sometimes I like to remember stuff. I don't like to forget things, and I don't like being crabby at the dog and stuff because he's barking. That's his job. But those are the things is why we have to really be safeguarding your battery juice on where we use it and what we use it for. Okay. And number one thing that will speed up and lose your battery juice is on demand stressful conversations. Conversations that you're not prepared for will eat up probably every little bit of juice you got because you not only do you not know what to expect, you don't know how to respond, and it's constantly changing. Our brains just aren't built for that. We don't work that fast. And because of our processing speed, kind of like a modem speed, not very fast, it's going to take a while for you even to understand what he said or they said that one sentence. And if they're giving you 20 sentences, you may be a week, 2 weeks before you figure out what the hell the conversation was about, right? Then you're exhausted because that's a lot of thinking. The more thinking you do, the more tired you're going to get. Because I know, especially when I am especially stressed, it feels almost like I have like the type 2 narcolepsy where I could probably sleep all day and I'll fall asleep like that. And I just can't keep it up. It just takes away from every possible, and then the brain fog. The memory is done. My ability to problem solve slows down. It's terrible. Okay. So now with your autobiographical memory, this detail processing, all these things. I mean, that's pretty cool. But actually, what's even cooler is that your procedural memory that comes up after if you practice something over and over again, you don't forget that either. We have a couple memory things that are kind of special about our brains, and it's specific because of what we're supposed to be doing with our lives, which is invention, creation, and making humanity better. And so we have the things that are necessary for that. We just aren't socializing. Okay. Then again, your brain not only does it has to do everything else, but it has to manage sensory input, whatever's going on. I don't care how old you are. This will always be an issue for you. And you can get as much practice as you want, but if you're not managing everything else, this stuff's going to come really fast. And now now the dog barking makes you want to just lose your mind, and everything else makes you want to lose your mind, and you're just not yourself. And I was like that for my entire life because my sensory issues are really, really bad. So, and my battery life is very short. So short battery life, fast sensory, fast anger, fast agitation, fast for me. It I it's not fun. And what's not even more fun is when people hold you to that past, because unfortunately, if you're undiagnosed, you don't have the tools, you can't control that, right? And that sucks ass. So we keep going forward. Let's see if I miss anything. So again, negative conversations are gonna what? increase your emotional load, which what we're going to lose more battery life. Okay. Your brain can't do all of that. It's your brain's just trying to do basic shit. Okay. And when you start adding conflict, stress response, and things are going to go to shit real fast. Okay. So sometimes it's just best to just walk away because is is it worth that? Is it worth a week's worth of burnout? Because uh, whoever you're with decided that they had to have argument, or you just walk away. Yeah, I know it feels bad, and I know you feel guilty, but who's most important? Is it you? Yes, it is you because you're. It's important for you to take care of yourself because you have to take care of yourself. You have to manage your autism. You cannot live your life and not manage it. If you do not manage it, you're going to be in bed. You ain't going to do shit. That's the reality. You have to manage your shit. And part of managing it means is that you have to self-care your shit like no one's business. I mean, that means you are priority. You have to love yourself more than you love anybody else because you have to have this to function. This is like having legs and having eyeballs. This is not like watching TV or nothing. This is important. So again, when you're in these conflicts, what you're focusing on the details. Now your brain's working even harder than it ever did because now you're trying to figure out patterns and things. And then you're trying to read between the lines because you don't know, because you don't have theory of minds. You don't like, what the fuck is this person saying? I don't understand, but I want to understand because I want this to stop. Well, again, you're never going to get there. I'm saying you're never. You probably could try, but why waste? Why waste good, valuable brain power on someone who's not going to understand you anyway? So when you have this, again, negative, dealing with conflict, tricky, the social dynamics, because again, you're never going to understand. I've researched manipulation and things of those natures. I still don't understand it because I just don't understand why anybody would want to do that to somebody else. It seems like such a waste of time, honestly, to do that to someone else. Why would you go through all this trouble to be mean and retaliate and passive aggressive? What's the point of that? Like it requires the amount of complex thinking that it requires. It's just not worth it. I'd rather use it for something else because I have so much things to do, and honestly, WordPress takes about all of it for me. And I think I left these things too long. All right, so again, your autobiography memory recall was very good. So don't let anybody gaslight you. Just ignore it. They're telling you that you didn't do it or that didn't happen because they don't remember. They just don't remember, and their brain is actually manufacturing this. And you can look this up yourself. Have a good time doing it because you're gonna read it. And you're gonna be pissed off because I was pissed off, especially after 40 some odd years, that I actually believed that I was a dumbass so much that I couldn't remember nothing. No, I remember everything when it comes to things that bring up emotion. Okay. Understand that cognitive dissonance with your neurotypical person is trauma related. Okay. It takes a lot of trauma for this to happen. Doesn't mean you forgive them. It just means that you're aware of it, aware of that, what caused it, why it's happening, and why you should just hold your ground. Because that's what the brain is doing to protect itself. Because your brain will always try to protect itself. It's always going to try to keep itself safe, and it's always going to try to make sure it's as efficient as possible. Okay. So you can't, I don't want to say you can't, just try to be compassionate. Don't conflict because you won't get anywhere. because the trauma response is so strong, it's just best just to say, you know what, I I don't agree. I'm going to walk away. If you can't walk away, you call you call the police. You call police. Call police. I've called police 3 times last year. Call the police and just say, this person won't leave me alone, and they'll come. And and if you got to do what you have to do, because again, this is about you and your quality of life. Okay. And when you are having to communicate with somebody who's ambiguous, who's not able to communicate to you clearly, can't even communicate to you honestly, and then changes on constantly, it's on demand, it's fast. It's exhausting, and you're going to go into burnout. You're going to be in burnout forever, and not forever, but it will feel like forever. And trust me, I've been there where it felt like forever. Okay, now, why? Like, why does this happen? Well, this is I learned this sociology. This is a thing, and it's kind of weird, but understand this is that neurotypical people need to have rules and things and such for them to do the right thing. And because if nobody sees them do the action, then they'll do it. So they have to kind of have the idea that they will get caught in order to stop doing it. Because if they believe they won't get caught, they will continue to do it. The book I read was it was a sociology book about I'll probably put the link in there once I figure it out. What's the name of that book? I can't remember. It's basically about how being social works, and social dysfunction in a way. I can't remember the name. I'm not surprised. Okay. So then again, we have the belief system in ourselves as neurotypical. I believe myself to be a good person, and any sort of criticism or anything outwardly makes me feel uncomfortable on the inside. So I fix that uncomfortable, yucky feeling by changing the viewpoint or perspective of my brain so that that feeling goes away. Okay. So again, this is from the get go. It's from the game. This is how it is. Uh, Everybody has different levels of cognitive dissonance based on how they're raised, how their caregiver interacted with them, how they're whether they were validated, not validated. This is when we start talking about family systems. We'll do that the next. I'm one of these. We'll talk about family systems. That's the beginning of it. But this is kind of like the after effect. What happens when shit gets bad? Okay, and then we have the internal and the external. Okay, the internal does not want to feel the shame. It does not like feeling shame and yuck. So it's easier to put it on you because then that shame and yuck goes away. Okay. And the whole idea is to make this yuck feeling go away, just like an overstimulated feeling. It's the same thing. They're just trying to make it feel go away. And then there's this social pressure that says, I got to follow the rules. And the rules say that, I'm a good person, and autistic people, they don't have empathy and things like that. So I really don't have to really care about what they have to say and so on and so forth. So I'm okay. Right. So here we are. Now we're moving along. You have an understanding. Okay. Then there's that internal sense of I'm a good person. They're not a good person because society says they're not a good person. I'm neurotypical, so therefore I'm a good person. Okay. And then if you're not being seen, nobody sees you, well, then I can get away with it. Hence where we have a lot of verbal abuse and things like that, because again, nobody sees me. I can do it. As long as no one punishes me, I'll keep doing it. Okay. And again, these things start from the very get-go. It's embedded in the unconscious. It's not like it's a bunch of psychopaths walking around. It's not like that. It's just that's how the brain works. But our brains don't have some of those parts, so it doesn't quite work the same. So the challenge is with understanding you as the autistic person is I'm assuming that you think like me, the neurotypical. So you're going to do the same things, act the same way, behave the same way, so on and so forth, right? And then if you don't do the behaviors that I believe that are the neural behaviors, I'm going to think negatively of that. I'm gonna put negative connotations and associate it to that. Okay, right? And then we have this expectation of social reciprocity. Because we have to follow the rules. The rule says that we have to ask people how their day is and then be nice back. That's the rule made by man. It's a man-made rule. It's not a law. It's not in Congress. You don't have to do shit. But they're making you believe that you do, otherwise you're a bad person. But you're not a bad person. These are rules made by society way, way, way back then. Okay. And we just don't follow them because we don't have those parts to follow those rules. And neurotypicals do. And so they do follow these rules and they expect for you to follow these rules, but you're not going to because I mean, if it doesn't make sense and the reasoning doesn't make sense, you're just not going to do it. But neurotypicals don't need to have that reasoning. They don't care if that reason, because socially, if the social group says that's how I'm supposed to feel, I'm going to do that first before I'm going to do the right thing. Okay. It's not the same. You understand the reasoning and it's just it doesn't match. Okay, so I know I've said this really fast. Yeah, like I said, it's my second video. I'm not the best at this. So understand this again. It's difficult for them to understand you because they have never ever understood a world without its social constructs and meanings. They don't know. So they can't understand you because they assume that you should know because they know. Okay. And what happens is they're so deeply rooted into their psyche. You could talk all day long, all day, every day, and it's still going to be the same. So you're better off just loving yourself and taking care of yourself because it essentially is a waste of your IQ to sit here and try to argue with someone who's just simply cannot understand your experience, because in order for you to really understand being autistic, you would have to be autistic because of how autism is. And that's just the real life. And here we go. The importance of refusing to be seen as having value based on social norms. Okay. So I know that holding on to your boundaries is going to hurt because nobody's going to like it. And it's going to suck. But you have to, in order to change things, you've got to say, no, I just don't, I don't accept that. Okay. Here we go. By refusing to be judged based on neurotypical constructs. I don't know why it keeps beeping in my head. By refusing to let's say, by refusing to be judged based on these neurotypical social constructs, autistic individuals challenge the idea that the value is tied to how well someone fits into a redefined social box. This helps shift the focus from conforming to celebrating different ways of thinking, interacting, and being. So simply by being yourself, your authentic self, and not being ashamed of yourself helps change the bias on autism. And not saying you're sorry. Don't say you're sorry, Why are you saying you're sorry? Don't say you're sorry. Just be yourself. And through time, and again, systems do not change overnight. It takes time, and it takes a lot of time for people to see for themselves how things are. Okay. Breaking free from social policy. Many neurotypical interactions involve a form of social policy where behaviors are subtly or not so subtly corrected to ensure they fit societal standards. For autistic people, this feels oppressive. You know it does. Trust me. You're like, fuck nah, I'm not doing that shit. Because it's an attempt to make them act in a way that does not feel natural. And if it does not feel natural, don't don't do it. Just say no. Walk away. Say, I can't. I'm sorry. This is my boundary. This is how I feel. I know for a lot of us, that's not so easy to do. Because you're gonna get punished. There's gonna be retribution. And you're gonna cry a lot, and it's gonna hurt. But it's possible to do. But you have to be able to withstand the pain because it's going to hurt. Because they're not going to want to give that to you. They're not going to want to give you that respect. And they're not going to want to respect your boundaries. And they're going to fight you on that. And they're going to tell you you're a bad person because you want those boundaries. And you have to really say, no, I love myself enough. I love myself more than I love you. Okay? And this is because I have to in order to function just like everybody, just like somebody needs a wheelchair. I need to have all my processes. And I don't need my cognitive processes fucking around on stupid shit like conflict and, other things that shouldn't matter. I wanted to put it where it belongs in helping people, helping society, those things of those natures. But part of this also means as an autistic person is that we have to be open to the fact that neurotypicals just don't understand because they just cannot. And it's not something to hate them for, it's to have a compassion for that they have not had that experience. And perhaps maybe if they had that experience, maybe they might have a different aspect or a different worldview, and maybe they might see things differently, but we have to accept that they don't if we want them to accept us as we are. Okay. You can't have both ways. You can't be like, no, you can't, and then accept it for me. That doesn't work. You have to accept those in order for them to accept you. And that's why when you stand firm, you say, you know what? Nah, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that. And even like my sociology class who wanted me to write my papers in a non-autistic way instead of my autistic way. And I quit college. I loved college. I loved college. But I'm not going to compromise myself to change into something I am not, because that's not who I am. And I lived that way for 46 years. And now, living authentically, now I can finally find true happiness within myself, because now at least I know who I am and I have the tools to succeed, whereas before I did not. And I understand we don't all have the opportunity to rescue ourselves, and we don't all have the opportunity to speak up for ourselves, but we do have the opportunity to call 911 and call the police if you want to, and you can. And you can file a complaint over and over and over again. 911, just call, say, this person's bothering me. I asked them to stop. I'm autistic. I don't feel safe. They are bothering me. And you may feel uncomfortable. I know I did. I felt terrible, uncomfortable, but it that you need to have record of that. And because again, you have to love yourself more than you love anybody else, because you have to in this type of condition, because this condition requires you to take care of yourself and to manage yourself in an appropriate way, which means that you have to love yourself enough to say, no, I will not accept that. No, you cannot do that. No, I will not do that. No, no. And no is okay. No is not a bad word. No is saying, I love myself, to know what my boundaries are, to know what I can do, what I can't do. And yes, you may think I'm angry. You may think this. That's your opinion. That's you. That belongs to you. That's not how I feel. And then you get up and you walk away. Or you just shut your mouth, look at the stars, think about Christmas, think about your wish list, whatever. But don't compromise who you are. There's no reason to. No reason to be different than who you are because you belong here and there's nothing obscene about you other than the fact that you are honest and that you speak your mind and that you don't conform and you don't comply. And you're just not an NPC, and that's okay. I prefer not to be an NPC. So I'm going to start my whatchamacallit, which is my Patreon. If you want to ask me questions specifically about your life or your child's life or something along those lines, and or here, and I'll try to answer them on there. It's a small subscription because I'm going through a divorce, so I got to have a little bit of income. But like I said, number one, you have value. You need to love yourself first. Take care of yourself and take care of your brain because your brain needs all the stuff it can get to work the way it needs to work. Because you have a beautiful brain. It belongs here. You belong here. You have a lot to offer. It's just that right now you're just really overstimulated. You're overwhelmed and your brain just can't get there because it's just too busy doing this other stupid shit. It's a waste. And you deserve better. You deserve a good quality of life. Everyone deserves that good quality of life. So my name is Christina. I hope you like and subscribe. If you have questions, please ask me. I'd be happy to talk about it. And I hope you understood a little bit. That's why I wrote everything down so you could read it. Well, ChatGPT, of course, help me because otherwise we'd be here all day. I just make errors out the ass. But again, this is about you loving yourself, seeing the value that you have within yourself, and knowing that you are okay as you are. And that's really the most important thing. That's the most important thing I want you to have. What was that? That was terrible. That was it. I'm done. I feel now I can play War Thunder. I'm gonna reward myself. So I hope you have a great night and you take care of yourself.